Hi guys, last year I made a video in which I tried to save my front wheel after it's been seriously buckled and cracked. It worked for a while, and if you want to see what I did to save my wheel, you can find the relevant link in the description below. Wheel subusing is very common in trials riding, and I'm sure that if you also ride bike trials you know what I mean. Typical competition bike trial wheels are built extremely lightweight, and they have to cope with quite powerful moves and harsh landings on corners, rocks and rails. Also, if you use rim brakes, the sidewalls of the rims are getting a bit thinner every time you regrind your rim, and hence they are also getting a bit weaker. So I really think that the wheels for bike trials should be considered as parts that need regular inspection and maintenance so as to prevent whenever possible any unwanted damages while riding. Also, after having damaged two wheel sets during the past 3 years, I've realized that I should be prepared for the worst case scenario, and thus I always have a spare set of rims in case that anything happens. However, you know that I really like to experiment and try new things, and so every time I damage one of my wheels, I try to think any tricks that I can do in order to repair possible damages or extend the lifespan of a new wheel. For example, if you watched my last wheel building video of how you can make the strongest wheels for trials, you'll notice that I had used nipple washers to better distribute the spoke forces around the nipple holes of the rims. It's been 2 years that I do this bike hack on my wheels, and I love it as my wheels are way stronger and more durable than ever before. Spoiler alert, it's been a while since I started developing my own nipple washers, but this is something that will be discussed in a future video. So you know what you can do if you want to get notified. But enough with this long introduction, and let's dive into today's wheel repair case, as I think that you may have faced a similar situation, especially if you ride low pressures and you land on corners. And this can also be very helpful for non-trial riders, as everyone tends to ride lower pressure these days. So 4 months ago I was trying some of the biggest gaps I can do when this happened. And I'm so lucky that I got this on camera, as you can see the moment that the side hole of the rear rim buckled exactly at the point that the two ends of the rim are getting connected and the side hole is the most vulnerable. This would definitely happen even if my rims were brand new, as the rims are getting connected with pins at the hollow part of their cross section, and so at this point the upper part of the side hole is not actually supported. Thus, my rim stood no chance after this one and the side hole collapsed. Anyway, that day I continued riding, as the probability of hitting at the same spot for a second time was so low, and I didn't want to believe that I could be so unlucky. When I got home, I thought of different ways to save this one, but in the end I decided to start by doing what I do every time I buckle the side hole of a rim. So I grabbed my adjustable spanner and tried to pry back the buckled sidewall to its initial position. This one was risky, as it was very possible to crack the material after bending back the side hole of the aluminum rim, but this move was to be done anyway, and I could not avoid its consequences. Thankfully, the side hole of the rim didn't break completely, but sure, it was cracked a bit, and whenever a crack has been initiated, it's almost certainly destined to fail sooner or later. However, I thought that it wouldn't be so probable to hit on the same spot very soon, as it just happened once in the last 4 years that I ride my competition trials bike. Hence, I decided to pump my real wheel up to see if it was able to withstand the pressure of the tire. Then it was time for a test ride, and it seemed that it was pretty good for that time. So I continued riding like that, but sure, I had it in my mind, and I was regularly checking to notice anything suspicious. This one withstood my regular training abuse for about 3 months, when I noticed that the crack has been propagated and the side hole had been failed completely at that area. So it was time to do something more drastic to try to save this wheel for a second time. So this time I had to somehow secure the cracked portion of the sidewall, and to do that I had two options, either to weld or glue the cracked sidewall. The first one was to carefully TIG weld the sidewall, but it would be a hassle as it's too thin, and also I didn't want to heat affect the surrounding material and to alter its properties. So I went with the second option, as gluing the crack was much safer for the rest of the rim, and also it's much easier for everyone to implement in a similar situation. Gluing implied that I used a filler material different than the rim's material, so as to build a bit of structure around the crack. For this one, I use a steel reinforced epoxy resin in conjunction with a bit of continuous carbon fibers. But before starting the application of any other material on the rim, I had to roughen the area using a small grinding wheel. This removed the layer of anodizing and made it easier for our resin to stick on the rim surface. Then it was time to prepare the steel reinforced epoxy resin by thoroughly mixing the two parts together. Next, I started with the application of some of the freshly mixed resin on the cracked area. Then it was time for the more serious reinforcements, and thus I chopped some carbon fiber yarn and I dipped it into the resin. After making sure that the fibers are well impregnated, I started transferring them on the cracked area, trying to keep the individual fibers as aligned as possible. I did that as I was trying to pack the maximum amount of fibers in the direction of the sidewall. After a while everything was quite good and it was time to compact the fibers as much as possible. So I used the silicone band as a tool to mold the supporting structure in such a way to ensure that it follows the rim's cross section and my tire will be able to properly sit on the sidewalls. Also, I have to mention that I used the silicone band as epoxy resin has hard time stick to silicone surfaces. After a while everything was well compacted and it was ready to left for a day to set. The next day it was time to inspect the results and I was very impressed as the steel reinforced resin had crept into the crack and also the supporting structure of steel and carbon fiber reinforced resin seems so strong and promising. After installing the tire and ensuring that it has been seated quite well, I was ready to ride again. It's been a month now after this repair and I've been trained at many different terrains and I haven't faced any issue yet. I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out and I think that I won't face a problem at the same area of the sidewall, at least for the remaining lifespan of this rim. What do you think about this repair? Also, what would you do in a similar situation? Would you replace your rim or would you also try to extend its lifespan as long as possible? Please let me know in the comment section below. Also, I've started thinking that I should consider strengthening the area where the two ends of the rim attach for the next time I build a wheel so as to avoid a similar situation in the future. Would you do it beforehand or it doesn't worth it? That's it for today's video and I really hope that you liked this one. If you found it helpful, you can share it and help others that may want to save a cracked wheel until they get a new one. Thank you so much for watching and until next time, have fun riding your bikes and make sure that your bikes are well maintained.